I want to get started right away. You know who the four speakers are. You've seen it in the agenda, but I will briefly introduce them once again. To my immediate left, I've got Rosa Maria Preterotti. I think I pronounced your last name correctly. Based in Rome with the Italian government, very active in many of the issues we're going to discuss today, including national expertise on Eurosur. So you certainly will have some questions for her, I'm sure. To her left, Klaus Rösler, who is the point man for Eurosur within Frontex. He will be giving an overview toward the end of our introduction here about how Frontex is preparing for Eurosur's arrival. To his left, we have Andreea Nicoliu, Romanian. Very pragmatic experience in dealing with the fusion of many of Romania's situational awareness systems, cross-sectoral and cross-ministerial, I assume, as well. She'll be telling us something about that. And to her left, Oliver Seifarth, who again is the point man in Brussels for Eurosur, also worked on previous border-related projects, has a lot of experience there, and we're going to kick off this debate with Oliver. So what I suggest is the following. Well, I'll give each a short 3 to 5 minute introduction, quick compression of their perspective and what they're working on, and then I've got a list of questions for each of the speakers I'd like to have them answer. You're free to answer the question or say, I don't want to do that, I'll answer another question. You don't necessarily have to agree with it. I'm here to provoke a little bit, so I see my moderator role a little bit different than perhaps the others, because that's my training. And then we'll have a little bit back and forth debate, and then I'm going to certainly throw it open to Q&A. I mean, this is a subject, Eurosur, which raises 1,001 questions, and if I was a border guard, I would have no trouble pitching my concerns, my worries, and my questions about how this thing is going to roll out and what it would mean for me as a border guard. So I do encourage you to ask your questions, and I suggest we'll sit around 10, maybe 15 minutes for Q&A, because we have to move on at 4. Okay, so with that, I want to throw the floor over to you, Rosa Maria. You've got 5 minutes. Please expand 5 minutes for an introduction, and I'll come back to you for other questions, not to worry. If you want to expand a little bit on what you do, I mean, I can think of a few questions. For instance, I noticed in your bio that you're heavily involved in risk analysis, the risk analysis approach. I would be very curious to know how is this working? Do you get cooperation from others? Do you see any chances for convergence of risk analysis between the member states, or is this just fantasy because local conditions are too diverse? Why don't we start with that question? Thank you.
Less than 5 minutes.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everybody. As regards the
hold the microphone close. Hold the microphone close to your mouth so everyone can hear.
As regards the connection between Italy and Eurosur, I want to say that Italy opened its National Coordination Center 1 year ago. And the principal characteristic is that in this our National Coordination Center, all of the authorities involved in Italian system to fight illegal migration by sea work daily together. The important what I want to underline is that we have together military and civil authorities, because in our center there is the principal forces, police forces, state police, Arma dei Carabinieri, and the Guardia di Finanza, with Coast Guard and Navy. So I think that our National Coordination Center is into the mood of the Eurosur. As regards
just a quick question on the risk analysis, because I want to jump over to Oliver, but just wanted to ask you, do you think risk analysis is something that can be converged across the member states? Just quickly, yes or no?
Yes.
You think it can?
Yes. We just exchanged risk analysis with other member states, a report of risk analysis, in two different ways. The first is through the Franc community, through Frontex, because we uploaded bi-monthly our analysis risk report, and the member states could receive the information directly before that Frontex can produce their risk analysis product. And the other route, the other way, is through the bilateral cooperation with the member states, or in this case the third countries, so through bilateral meetings, exchange of information between a liaison officer and the immigration
and they understand the risk analysis that you send them. They understand it.
Yes.
Okay.
We send the risk analysis.
I understand that, but I mean, there are all kinds of interoperability problems in this field with risk analysis. I mean, I've seen it with crisis management and what the European Commission is trying to do. It's a very difficult thing to do, to exchange among the member states. Anyway, I'll come back to you on that in just a moment. Over to you, Oliver. Please give us your intro, an overall view where your review stands and where it's headed.
Well, thank you very much, Brooks. When I look into the room, I see half of the Frontiers Working Party here, and the other half, I have the feeling is working on the implementation of Eurosur. So if you allow me, it's almost for me like a family reunion. I think what you just discussed is very important. When a few years ago, the Commission and Frontex were discussing Eurosur, the head of the Frontex Risk Analysis Unit, Javier Quesada, was saying, when he looks at this, Eurosur means that we move from a patrolling to an intelligence-driven approach, or to a risk analysis-driven approach in border surveillance. And this is very much, in fact, one of the main issues. Just to give a short update on where we stand with Eurosur, good news first. I'm 99% convinced that we will have a political agreement on the Eurosur regulation between the Presidency, the Council, the European Parliament, and the European Commission next week. There are a few procedural steps still to be taken, but this allows us to make Eurosur, as planned, operational by the end of the year. Just summing up what the Council, the European Parliament, and Frontex, what was their main input, what was were their main concerns. I think it was crucial that from the very beginning, member states were understanding Eurosur as their own system. It's a European system, but at the same time, member states took ownership of Eurosur from the very start. And while Frontex has a crucial role in Eurosur to play, it is the member states' national coordination centers, where Rosa Maria Peterotti is the head of in Italy, which are the backbone of Eurosur. And we have here, in fact, two examples. Rosa Maria already mentioned how Italy, I think, which can serve as an example for many other member states, is focusing on connecting people, on interagency cooperation in their national coordination center. When we look at what Andrea will present, the Romanian National Coordination Center, the Romanian experience, there we have interlinking different national systems and European systems with each other. Land border surveillance, maritime border surveillance, border checks, cameras, Schengen information system, and so on. What did the Council change in comparison to the Commission proposal? Well, first of all, it clearly widened the scope of Eurosur. When the Commission presented a roadmap in 2008, we thought, okay, it's enough to focus on the southern and eastern land and maritime borders. 18 member states is enough. Then we got quite some lobbying from some member states, Germany, Netherlands, Belgium. And in the legislative proposal in 2004, we proposed to include all member states with external land and maritime borders, meaning 24 member states. As a result of the negotiations in the Frontiers Working Party, and as I said, many of you have been there, we have now 30 member states, including Croatia, 31, which will participate in Eurosur. And what I still find very positive, but also still I was a bit surprised, that there was not a single member state being a bit more critical about Eurosur, but in fact there's a strong willingness simply to get the job done. When we come then to also another issue was that the Commission proposed land and maritime border surveillance, but to keep border checks and air border surveillance for later. There's now sort of a compromise to have it included on a voluntary basis. So in case member states want to provide information on border checks and air border surveillance to Eurosur, to Frontex, they are fully entitled to do so. But then in the second step, when it comes to the revision of Eurosur, the foreseen revision of Eurosur in 2016, then most likely I think it would be the logic step to fully include border checks and probably also air border surveillance. For the European Parliament, I think it was very important that they did not see, never discussed Eurosur as Fortress Europe, but they understood right from the start that it is a multi-purpose system which also contributes to the protection and saving of migrants' lives. This was a very important point for the European Parliament, but it was, I think, also almost equally important for the European Parliament to keep the fine balance between Frontex and member states as proposed by the Commission. As you might understand, that sometimes there's a bit of a temptation by member states to, yes, Frontex should play a role, but only be a service provider. Now the Eurosur regulation goes in the role of Frontex. It's more than a service provider. It has a crucial role to play, depending on the different parts of Eurosur. And I think Frontex also indirectly played a very important role when we were negotiating the Eurosur regulation, because Frontex was already, together with member states, developing and testing the different components of Eurosur on a pilot basis, such as the Eurosur communication network, which provided, I think, a lot of willingness and also input to the legislative negotiations. It was a both-way interaction, which is not necessarily what normally happens in Brussels, but which clearly helped to improve the system as a whole, the legislation. Frontex gets a lot of additional responsibilities and tasks, in my opinion, with the Eurosur regulation. And of course, it needs for this additional human and financial resources. We are currently working on this. We are facing at the same time a financial crisis. So I'm quite confident that there will be for sure additional funding and additional also human resources. It's still a Commission, internal discussions are still going on. Maybe not as much as wished for or as even justified, but this is very important. And to come to an end, what is important that we really make Eurosur operational by the end of this year, but also that we are aware at the same time that not everything will be up and running from day one. On the contrary, Eurosur is conceived as a system, as a project, as a process which will never stop, which will always be further improved. So it's not like a system in a way like the Schengen Information System second generation, where you fill certain criteria and that's it, and you implement them. But there is some evolutionary character in it. I think it starts maybe also a new way of thinking in border surveillance, to close the circle again, to follow a more intelligence, a more risk analysis-driven approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. Well, despite the financial crisis, there are some countries that have put their operational picture in order by implementing very integrated systems to prepare for Eurosur's arrival, and also to complement what they must do with Frontex. One of those is Romania. And perhaps you could give our audience just a quick flavor of what your country has done. And we've got some other issues we can discuss later on about your border and relations with your neighbors as well.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. And I would like to give you the answers to your questions regarding the Romanian model in implementation of Eurosur. We looked after Eurosur like a European implementation of the integrated border management model. So we based everything that we've done on the integrated border management system revised in the Schengen catalog, and as a Bible of Eurosur implementation, first at national level, because as Oliver said, Eurosur is our own system, national and European system, and we've based all our operational thinking of constructing a very operational and very functional system based on everything that Romania has already done in terms of IBM implementation, so integrated border management implementation. First of all, we have implemented the integrated border management system by applying all the principles and by financing all the components as stipulated in the Schengen catalog. And then we have connected the Eurosur to our own national system. In Romania, it's a special and fortunate situation due to the fact that the Romanian Border Police is a national-wide body under the subordination of the Ministry of Interior, but it's the only body responsible for border surveillance and border control. So we have the both components integrated in the same system. We have a strategic level with a national strategy for implementation of integrated border management and an action plan, and also we have an operational component which means procedures in order to act, and also a technical component. Following a Frontex operation carried out in 2008, the first and the last operation organized by Frontex at the Black Sea, due to the fact that we don't have so much operational situation regarding the illegal migration in the Black Sea, fortunately. And due to this fact, we have implemented this operation having as the main tasks to improve the coordination and the situational awareness as well as the reaction capabilities of our institutions and our neighbors, the Bulgarian colleagues. Thus, we have concluded and we have set up a National Coordination Center, a pilot project, and based off this National Coordination Center, having the border surveillance system at the Black Sea, called as COMAR, many of you have already seen it and you know what I'm talking about. We have connected the SCOMAR system present at the Black Sea with the national systems, meaning we brought the image from the Black Sea in Bucharest. That was the first route and the first ground of constructing Eurosur. After that, we have developed the system for border surveillance at the land border, at our EU external borders, meaning border with Moldova, with Ukraine, and also with Serbia. And we have integrated the images and also the information in the system. And after that, we have also connected with the air borders. Having in mind the fact that the Romanian Border Police is a police-type institution, intelligence-driven, that means that our core value is the information, the intelligence, and the processing and gathering the intelligence. And having in mind that all our activities are based on risk analysis. So, meaning, having in mind this, we have spent more than 1 billion euros in order to construct a national-wide system to have the image from all the surveillance segments and the border crossing points in the National Coordination Center, connected to all the information we are receiving from the border crossing points. And for example, I can say that we can acquire only by typing a person's name in all the databases online available, national and international. We have also an entry-exit system and also an e-APIS, which enables us to check the third country passenger coming to Romanian airports. So, saying that, I think that we have constructed this system, and then we said, okay, we have the national image, and now we need some more issues, some more information. And we have now the picture from Eurosur, from the other 17 member states, I think. According to the density image, the specialist, the professionals can imagine what I'm talking about. And in terms of operational issues, I think that we function better because we have better situational awareness and reaction capabilities in terms of information.
Whew, that's a military commander's dream. I know a lot of, I also cover military affairs, and many of them don't have that kind of situational awareness. You'd be surprised. But again, bingo, risk analysis came up again. Back over to Italy. I mean, risk analysis must be very important for your country. You've been heavily involved as a national expert in the Eurosur project. What does Italy expect? What are you preparing for Eurosur, and what do you expect from Eurosur, given the obvious coastal problems that you have?
First of all, the analysis layer that Frontex is developing with the cooperation of the member states in the Eurosur network with a useful tool to improve in general the situational awareness and consequently provide a better performing and more structured risk analysis. As regards the risk analysis, the common risk analysis approach, we would like to mention for the first the SIRAM and the guidelines for risk analysis unit, realized by the agency in close cooperation with the member states. The SIRAM Common Integrated Risk Analysis Manual has the purpose of establishing a clear and transparent methodology for risk analysis to promote harmonization and precondition for efficient information exchange and cooperation in the field of border security. So it's a serve benchmark for analytical activities. The guidelines is another manual with the purposes of providing a set of standard guidelines for intelligent operations and management. And this is the theoretical support documents to reach the target of having a common risk analysis approach. And this is the background, but, and we arrived at the Eurosur and the IPAC level. When we take into consideration this methodology, this background, we also take into consideration the considerable differences between the member states in terms of geographical positions and the population. However, if we utilize only a mathematical formula to attribute a risk level, the consequence could be to attribute the same risk level or after impact level for countries in which 20 illegal migrants arrive in a month and for countries in which over 2,000 arrive in the same period. So, for example, if 40 people arrive on the southern coast of Italy, the management of the event doesn't have, in general, critical aspects, either from the migrant system or from the police procedure points of view, whereas the same number of migrants arriving in a less densely populated country or one with less experience of managing similar events would be more problematic for local authorities and would generate alarm. But with reference to the internal security of the European Union, we cannot put 20 migrants and 200 migrants at the same level when attributing the risk level, because 20 migrants require more work and simple more problem. With the occasion, I would like to explain the simple differences between SIRAM and the Eurosur regulation concerning the risk level. In the SIRAM, we have 5 risk levels: low, intermediate, moderate, high, severe. In the Eurosur regulation, we have 3 risk levels and consequently impact levels: low, medium, high. Because the SIRAM is a model for conducting risk analysis, the Eurosur regulation prefers only 3 levels because it would have been very difficult to specify for 5 levels each different element, and the regulation it would have become too rigid. In conclusion, I think that the European Union should, we refer always in the risk analysis sector, at the same time recognize the diversity of the situations in the various countries and work to harmonize, never neglecting local realities and not attempting to force one single criteria on very different situations.
Okay, thank you. Well, that gives us some insight into your risk analysis. Just a quick question. We've heard from Andrea how they do data fusion between their ministries. How does that compare to the situation in Italy? Could you explain that to our audience?
At the moment, we collect all information from the various authorities that arrive in our National Coordination Center. Obviously, we respect each competencies. For example, we follow with the incident illegal migration by sea. When this incident is transformed in a search and rescue activity, we immediately inform the competent authorities as the Coast Guard. What we expected to Eurosur is that with Eurosur we can receive more information, we can exchange more quickly the information.
Exchange between Italian entities, you mean?
Between Italian entities, not all, but between Italian and other member states or third countries involved. So, because the scope of Eurosur is to fight illegal migration, to combat related cross-border crime, but the combination of these two factors is aimed to contributing to avoiding the loss of life at sea. So it's a very important issue.
Mm-hmm. Good. So there you see not only exchanges between member states, but Eurosur should also facilitate greater information exchange within a given member state as well. Let's move over to you, Klaus. I'm assuming here that most people are high enough up in their hierarchies, they know what Eurosur is, but also if there are folks here who aren't, or perhaps from third countries, we ought to try and keep this thing fairly concrete. What does it mean for Frontex, how Frontex is going to relate to the member states? Let's explain it from your institutional point of view, what it means. Klaus.
Thank you, Brooks. And I would like to first express my gratitude for Rosa Maria explaining the risk analysis importance and the risk analysis impact level assessment methodology, which is of...
Hold the microphone close to your mouth, sir.
Which is of high importance for operational running of Eurosur. I would secondly come back to your introductory remark saying that I could explain how we manage if Eurosur arrives at Frontex. It made me a bit smiling. And I would like to explain that the contraception of Eurosur was in 2006 when Frontex and the Commission carried out the Vortex study. And Frontex received Eurosur at least 2 years ago, launching the big pilot, so-called big pilot project, a capacity building and technology-driven pilot activities to develop the technical communication network and to develop the services and the products that contribute to operational Eurosur. And even more, the regular analytical and operational services of Frontex feed in now to Eurosur when we currently are in the transition period from the pilot activities to the operational services and activities to be provided when most probably 1st of October the Eurosur regulation will come in force. What means it practically? Frontex has to ensure a comprehensive information management. And this is related to the objectives of Eurosur. The Eurosur objective, it's worth to reiterate, improved situational awareness for the detection of illegal migrants and cross-border crime, plus aiming to save more lives, most probably at sea, in distress at sea, and to connect this situational awareness through analysis to an adequate operational response. Frontex means that Frontex is ensuring the situational awareness by providing the European situational picture, compiling parts of the situational picture of the member states that they transmit to Frontex or they have to transmit to Frontex. Secondly, to do the same view beyond the EU external borders to compile the common pre-frontier intelligence picture. Both have 3 layers: events layer, what happens and what is to see in terms of movement or migratory flow or movement related to cross-border crime. Operational layer, what are the member states authorities are doing, where are the vessels and other technical assets, how intensively is the operational daily work is done, and the analysis layer, how the risks are assessed and what conclusions are to be drawn for operational response. And this is again serving the objective early detection of migratory flows and crime-related movement in order to adequately and quickly respond, preferably by saving lives of migrants at sea. Frontex is doing more. Frontex is doing the impact level assessment of border sections of member states, and the impact level assessment is being done in agreement with the member states, assigning high, medium or low level of impact for border security, and this impact for border security is crucial and is basis for the appropriate response, intensity of response and responsibility of response. More on the member state side, mainly on the member state side, and on request with additional support of Frontex. For doing this, tools have to be used. And the main important and biggest tool is the development and the maintenance of the communication network. This has Frontex done with its pilot activities since, as I said, at least 2 years. The so-called Eurosur nodes are deployed to 18 member states. The system is ready to connect with surveillance systems and situational awareness systems of member states. The system is ready to be the transmission tool for providing additional services and to be prepared for the operational running. The operational running on a daily basis will be described in a handbook, Eurosur handbook, and this is then the 4th or the 5th main task of Frontex, that Frontex contributes and leads the drafting of this Eurosur handbook under the umbrella of the Commission responsibility.
Okay, good. So there's a crisis, someone does the risk analysis, and it's sent back out to the 27 member states. It flows down all the way to the border through the Eurosur system. I'm a border guard in Lithuania or in Bulgaria. Will I understand what I'm seeing, or do I need to worry about it because my boss will tell me what to do? I mean, it sounds silly, but if you're sitting in front of a computer screen with brand new equipment trying to handle these great new capabilities and services that Eurosur presumably is going to generate in the future, I guess my question is, how much additional training are the member states going to have to do of their guards, and how far down the chain do you think this will have to go? Do we have an idea yet? From anyone on the panel, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think that we must understand Eurosur not like a very technical toy in order to be used by someone in order to have some information and some images, but it is another way of border guarding, another way of thinking our duties. So it changes the activity starting from the basic border guard working in a border patrol or in a border crossing point, to the middle management, and then to the high-level management at the headquarters of the border police structures in all the 27 member states. What I mean is that Eurosur means a technical component, but also an operational procedural component, which allows us to have a better reaction capability and situational awareness. What does it mean this? That a normal border patrol can be followed all out its route, and out of a border patrol we can identify and also to have better information at national level, and if it's relevant at European level. So from a border crossing point we have the same procedure. So they must be equipped very well, and high-level technical equipment they need, and nevertheless they must be trained. They must be motivated and paid. So having in mind this, I think that it's relevant not only to construct this border surveillance system, but also to have the necessary means to maintain them, to have the necessary money to keep the system running, because if you don't have the national system running, you don't have an international surveillance system, and you don't have any Eurosur, you don't have images, you don't have information, and you don't have people to transmit them, to connect with them. Apart from this maintenance system, which means a lot of money, it's the system of recruitment, selection, and also training of border guards. We Romania, we had to give our border guards new skills in order to use the modern, very fashion equipment, thermovision camera, thermovision with a lot of capabilities, new capabilities, equipment, very fancy cars to be able to reach very important and mountain area in the Danube Delta, in very plain and in muddy areas. So it's a challenge for every member state, but also to the European Commission and the European supporting bodies to maintain and to support the border guards all over Europe if we want to have this Europe running.
Oliver, that raises the money question in Brussels. The general budget, as we all know, of the EU is still being negotiated. Does this have any implications for the funding of Eurosur? Do you think we'll get most of what we need or fall short of it? Do you have a sense where things are going?
Well, it's a discussion which reminds me when I was responsible for the Schengen facility, which was a 1 billion euro support program for the new member states. There was a discussion at a certain moment whether this EU program could not also maybe pay the salaries of the border guards. At that time, the response was very clear. This is not in line with the current programming rules. When it comes to the internal security fund, there is a small, gradual, but very limited opening up of a little bit going into the direction of maintenance, but it is an issue, this is for sure. But for the time being, the rules of the EU programming rules are that procurement, yes, maintenance, no.
There's your answer for the time being. Rosa Maria, your country is also involved in some pretty important pilot projects, testing surveillance on land, at sea, etc. Blue Mass Med is one of the more better ones. Perseus is another one. Are there any lessons learned that we can draw from these projects and others at this point? What to do, what not to do, how this might affect the way Eurosur is used? Please elaborate on that for us, please.
Well, Italy is currently involved in the POV Closai project, cooperation project, POVCs 2020 and was involved in BluMassMed too. We think that this kind of a pilot project are very useful for improving mutual knowledge between member states, in particular regarding operative aspects. Because there are a lot of differences between the member states, as I mentioned before, from a geographical and organizational perspective. And these differences are highlighted when we attempt to find common solutions for problems and a shared approach for future challenges. Another added value of this kind of pilot projects regards the exchange of experience between civil and defense institutions toward a better integration in the common field with the aim of making savings in the future, human and financial resources. Regarding the connection between BMM and Eurosur, I can say that with BMM we opened the road to promoting a more productive exchange.
Just a moment, I have to intervene. BMM, BluMassMed.
BluMassMed project.
You have to explain your acronyms.
It was BluMassMed. It was a pilot project. It finished at June last year with under the umbrella of DG Mare with the participant Italy, Spain, France, Greece, Malta, and Portugal. And we exchange this information between these different communities: border control, environment, defense, customs, safety. But frankly speaking, the goal is still distant. And from the operational point of view, I am always an operative, I came state police. It would be more productive to concentrate our energies on exchange information with a clear target. So, for example, the scope of Eurosur is to fight illegal migration related to cross-border crime, contributing to saving lives at sea, rather than realizing a sort of big brother. Undoubtedly useful for having a complete maritime situational awareness, but considering what I said and we said before together, less useful at the moment from an operational point of view. The goals of BMM and Eurosur as the connection with other user community are closely linked about the exchange of information. But at this moment, Eurosur seems to me to be more concrete. For Perseus, I think that with Perseus, Eurosur could receive useful indications for improving the system, and we can say the same for the result from the other project, POV CLOSAI, in which we try out new surveillance tools and connect it between the various authorities and the National Coordination Center.
How are those NCCs coming along, by the way, National Coordination Centers? Klaus or Olivia, does everyone have one? Are they fully up and running? Perhaps you could comment on that, bring our audience up to date on where things stand.
Well, if I may come in fact, Frontex, as Klaus has already mentioned, connected by December last year already the first 18 national coordination centers of those member states, which shall apply Eurosur as of the end of this year. In other words, we are, for once, ahead of time schedule. And now this is being tested, this is going on. There are, of course, still some problems in some member states, and the problems are different in every member state. For instance, in one member state, customs should maybe join the National Coordination Center, but they didn't do it yet. In another one, it's police. In another one, it's the Navy. But generally, there's a trend, and I think that's the most important, what Rosa Maria mentioned, that you have different agencies not only cooperating with each other, but cooperating inside the National Coordination Center with each other. And this is a highly political decision. This is very much about egos, about traditions, about power. And there are quite a number of power struggles going on in the member states for the time being, but I think the train has left the station and everybody is now going in this direction, and I'm quite confident that we get there.
Klaus, what does that say for the border sectors? They've all been clearly defined? They've got their agreements in place that my border sector along, the Dutch border is going to coordinate with and exchange information with that of Germany, et cetera, or is this still need some work?
This is also a process that is ongoing. Some member states have done a more advanced work, and others are still in the state of developing. Frontex has created a so-called analysis layer user group between the members of analytical units in the member states, and this analytical layer user group will together work on the methodology of impact level assessment. They will bring together the work that comes from definition or determination of border sections, which are relevant for the impact level assessment, and they will then work on the impact level assessment as such, plus they will be in charge for the so-called analytical layer of one of the three layers of the situational pictures. And I would like to come back to 2 points which were mentioned by Rosa Maria and also what Andrea said. The first is that technology, as Rosa Maria explained and described with the pilot project, is of importance for the further development to have a comprehensive and have a complete situational awareness and to have adequate assets and tools for operational response. The second thing is that this determination of border sections to be done by member states as a basis for the impact level assessment and the contribution with analysis to the situational picture is crucial, and this makes the Eurosur intelligence driven to really serve and to achieve its objectives. And I could also subscribe to what was mentioned by Andrea. Eurosur is not a technical system. Eurosur is a business concept that is about changing our border guard work in a modernized, in a structured, and in an enriched way. And the Frontex role will be to apply all these elements that have been described for example, for the Roman National Coordination Center, awareness plus response capacity, which has been described from Rosa Maria, interagency cooperation. We have to provide our services and we have to apply these elements and these processes on the EU level. This is the crucial role of Frontex, and then, and doing so, Frontex will provide additional value, additional services to the member states and enriching the improved situational awareness.
But meanwhile, important to get that border sector cooperation going. Everyone out in the audience hear that? Go lobby your bosses. Okay, we've got 10 minutes now left before the hour is up. I think we should throw this open to Q&A, assuming we have some interest in this subject. So I already see a hand here. I think we'll take a few questions at a time. Please raise your hand. One here. Anyone else? Another back there. Okay. Yes, sir. Do we have an extra microphone, or? Hello, technicians. Do we have a sixth microphone or not?
These are the good services of the Commission. Thank you very much.
Okay. Please introduce yourself.
Stefan Kessler. I'm the co-chair of the Fundamental Rights Consultative Forum with Frontex. And I would like to know whether in the new Eurosur regulation text there will be a role for the Fundamental Rights Officer as well as for the Consultative Forum. And I would also like to know, since I have heard from Mrs. Nicolio that it's easy to communicate personal data, especially within the country, but also with third countries, what are the safeguards for data protection on certain migrants? And the third question is, I like the Wow. The reasoning that Eurosur is aimed to help saving lives at sea, but I wonder whether the complex question of responsibility will be solved. We don't have only the question of detecting boats in distress, but also we have the complex discussion about who is responsible, which member state is responsible to render assistance.
Okay, thank you. We'll take one other question. Please try and keep the questions short and sharp.
Yeah, thank you very much. Jorrit Rijma, Leiden Law School. My first question was actually exactly the same that the last question is. You have been saying it's about saving lives. Actually, the initial Commission proposal did not include that, then it was put back in. So what do? We raise situational awareness, but what is the next step? Are we preparing for that already? My second point is the issue of the financial crisis is now mentioned as an argument that we don't know how much Frontex will get to actually effectively implement this, but we are spending an incredible amount of money on the system itself. Isn't that a bit contradictory?
Okay, well, a lot of those questions seem to be going to our Frontex and Commission folks. So, Oliver, do you want to start?
Maybe I start, and to be added, an Fundamental Rights Officer Consultative Forum. It is a recital has been added in the final text of the Eurosur regulation, clarifying that, of course, the same rules like in the Frontex regulation apply, which means that the Fundamental Rights Officer and the Consultative Forum have, in principle, full access to information concerning Eurosur, which is in Frontex. I think that's a pretty clear provision there, which was the result of discussions with the European Parliament. Next question, personal data. There is a new article to be included on personal data protection in the Eurosur regulation, which on the one hand clarifies that at national level, personal data can of course be processed in line with national and EU data protection rules. At European level, the personal data for the time being is extremely limited, namely only to ship identification numbers, for instance, IMO numbers, which in themselves are not even personal data in the classical sense, because you find AIS data, in fact, also on the internet. But here there are clear rules, also clear limitations, detection and tracking of a vessel, and automatic deletion after 7 days. And in case there are operational needs, it can only prolong up to 2 months. This is also the latest text. Saving of lives at sea. It was the Commission, in fact, which was bringing this up from the very beginning in the 2008 Eurosur roadmap. That time, even as an equivalent objective of Eurosur, we were a bit more hesitant, but we are very happy with the final result in the Eurosur regulation, where it is also a sort of an objective of Eurosur, similar to the prevention of irregular migration and cross-border crime. And the problem here simply is that well-meant does not necessarily lead to good results. What do I mean? We have an international regime for maritime search and rescue. We have maritime search and rescue coordination centers in place, the zones, and so on. And by no means we should create a parallel system which then would compete. These two systems would compete, and at the end nobody knows what it is. For instance, in Italian waters we find a yacht with an American billionaire on board, and then the National Coordination Center in Rome would say, no, you're not a migrant, we're not responsible for you, so drown. I mean, a life is a life. So here it is very important what we have now in the Eurosur regulation, that in the national situational picture, in the events layer, incidents with regard to which are linked to protection and saving of migrants' lives will be marked in a specific way, and also this will be known by Frontex, but the clear responsibility to react here is with the Maritime Search and Rescue Coordination Center, and there's also now an obligation in the Eurosur regulation that the National Coordination Center has to establish, like most member states have already done, the communication channels and cooperation mechanisms with, for instance, Maritime Search and Rescue Coordination Centers. A word on this issue, maybe you have seen in my short description of my CV that I worked once 6 years for NGOs in the asylum field. So for me, the fact that thousands of people are drowning in the Mediterranean, Canary Islands around is shameful. And the Commission has always been very serious about really changing this situation. On the other hand, you will have noticed that we are a bit careful sometimes with the wording, because the main problem we face is the detection and tracking of small boats. We are working on this at full speed. We have dedicated working groups on this issue, also together with industry. We make a very huge effort. The Close Eye project was mentioned, but I have to admit it is extremely difficult. If you have a small wooden boat with 7 meters long in the Mediterranean, if they don't want to be found, it's very difficult to find them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I would like to connect with the question, what happens after detection? The search and rescue aspect has been mentioned by Oliver, and it's worth to reiterate that 2 out of 3 detected migrants are rescued, are subject to a search and rescue operation. It means that border surveillance regularly turns into search and rescue operation, coordinated by the responsible search and rescue centers, following international law. European border surveillance law is not necessary for that, because the international law applies. And everything else would lead to not saving more life, but to creating more confusion. This is my personal opinion about that. But the question, what happens after the detection, leads also to the role of Frontex and the impact of operations. We have the expectation that the situational picture and the analysis connected to this, or being part of the situational picture, will lead to adequate response capacity. This response capacity should be provided mainly by the member states responsible for their border section at sea borders, at land borders, and at border crossing points. And if the impact level is assigned high, it means that a member state or a border section is exposed to an extraordinary and unexpected pressure of migratory flow, or the border section is exposed to an unexpected increase of cross-border crime in which dimension ever, then the member state doing its utmost to cope with this situation may also request support by Frontex. And then it affects the operational cycle of Frontex, the planning of our operations following priorities, the requirement to have a more flexible solution for extraordinary cases, to be able to react also close to real time, not only following an annual cycle, up to the quick response capacity that we call rapid border intervention. And on the question with the financial crisis, I have said before that Frontex, through relocation of resources and restructuring of processes, is now able to provide the basic services, the basic service requirements of Eurosur. When it comes to a further development and a provision and request and after that provision of extended services, which could be expensive services as geographic data or satellite imagery, then the question again, as mentioned by Oliver, comes up that this would require also additional resources on EU level for Frontex.
Very well. We're reaching the end, but I do want to.
Sorry for interrupting you,
Go right
but
ahead.
I have also
Always
some
have to wait
questions.
the microphone so I can.
Yeah, I have some questions to answer. Referring to the personal data, at national level, we are observing the legislation regarding the personal data in between the national institutions, and we have a very thorough system of controlling the respect of the rules exchanging the personal data in Romania. And regarding the exchanging the personal data in between the NCC, I think that we must do a very thorough difference between the exchange of personal data in the justice penal system and the exchange of data in surveillance and control systems, and a total difference between the cooperation with the third countries. As far as I know, the actual Eurosur image does not include officially any information from a third country, but only information provided by member states. We have concluded with our Moldovan colleagues some tests of exchanging information in Eurosur, meaning only statistical data regarding the activities at the border. And we are analyzing the activities at the border, taking into consideration only statistical indicators. That means that our information is like that. 5 persons have been identified. A group of 10 persons has been captured or something identified and detained. So this kind of data we are exchanging at the border at the national level with our third country neighboring colleagues. Nevertheless, I must stress the fact that we don't have any Eurosur if we don't have the cooperation of our neighboring third countries. So we must very much welcome them in our cooperation, and by respecting of course, the legislation in force, we must identify a way to cooperate with them in order to have the prefrontalier image, which will be which will give us the complete image of the situation at the EU external border. So we don't exchange personal data with third countries in any kind of systems, automatic system or any other system, but only under the rules, under the penal system. So that was the answer to your first question, and for you and also for the colleague that was interested in how are we reacting in terms of saving lives, I can give you a very practical, technical example of the Romanian Border Police intervention capacity. So when we identify a target, meaning let's say a ship endangering human lives, we have very developed 99% endowed reaction capabilities, means intervention boats, and also reaction capacities coordinated by the local coordination centers placed usually in Constanța or in Mangalia, which are the local coordination center at the Black Sea, which are connected to the national coordination center, and the reaction capacities and the time of reaction is very much decreased due to the fact that we have already divided the border in border segments, and each border patrol, meaning ship, or car, or it doesn't matter what does it mean patrol, but it's intervention patrolling capacity can act right away. And we have saved a lot of lives at our in the Black Sea. And I want to add something else. In our country, the Coast Guard is a part of the border police, of the national border police. That means that the Coast Guard is integrated in the integrated border management system of one approach, of one national approach. So we have the control and the management capacity at national level also. Thank you very much.
Okay, yes, we should quickly bring this to an end unless anyone has a burning question. Do I see any hands there? No, very well. Okay, well, we're a little bit after 4. Thank you for your patience. And thank all 4 of you, Rosa Maria, Klaus, Andrea, Oliver, for very concrete questions and keeping your questions short and to the point. We'll wrap it up here now, and I want to thank our audience for attending. You see who the people are. If you've got any questions, come running up to them, give them your business card right away. All right? And with that, thank you.